All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the E-commerce Revolution podcast. This is episode number 32 and counting. We are coming to you live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. And for anybody else who's listening to this after, I guess your future self, if you're listening to this after the live broadcast is over and you're getting the replay, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are posting these regularly. We are doing at least a few podcasts per month. And we'll continue to ramp up, trying to bring you as many interesting and important topics as possible. My name is Ramin. I am your host. I'm also the managing partner, one of the managing partners here at SKU Agency. And it's great to have everybody here. So let's just get this thing started. This is just the beginning. So today we're talking press releases. And as I do each and every episode, I spend quite a bit of time doing research using the wonderful world of what is available to us out there informational wise. And we did quite a bit of research this time around. So as we're talking about press releases, did you know that, for example, the first press release was sent out in 1906 by Ivy Lee? Okay, he was the father of the modern public relations movement, if you will, and was sending out a press release about a railroad accident involving the Pennsylvania Railroad. Well, that is at least according to Wikipedia. So we hope that information is completely accurate. But that dates back, early 20th century. This process of press releases started. Right? So in today's noisy marketing environment, press releases remain a powerful means of conveying details about forthcoming events, significant news that's out there, but equally important, they can also have a significant impact on your e-commerce site's traffic and sales. And we're going to dive deep into that today. All right. And as we do for each episode of the E-commerce Revolution podcast, we look for that bona fide expert. And this time the bona fide expert came to us. And this is awesome because I love this topic of press releases. And I'm so happy to have our guest on today because we are going to ask a lot of questions about the world of press releases. Our guest has been in the PR space for over 25 years. And by the way, down at the bottom of his site, I noticed a copyright date of 1998. 1998. What were you doing in 1998? Think about that. All right. He enjoys British science fiction, acknowledges to have an unhealthy addiction to diet soda. I'm guessing Diet Coke maybe in there, but we'll ask him. All right. And today we are pleased, very pleased to welcome Mickie Kennedy, founder and CEO of eReleases, to the show. Mickie, it is great to have you here. What an amazing background you have. I love the colors.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Very nice. Well, so 1998, yes. That's a long time ago. And as we were doing in our pre-show conversation, talking about what did the world of the internet look like back in 1998, but maybe just take us back to how you started eReleases and what was what got your attention around this?
So I had finished an MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry. And I just figured I'd wait tables and write poetry in the evenings. And after I graduated, I did just that for a summer. And I realized that my ankles and back and knees could not handle it. And I felt so psychologically drained at the end of a 10, 12-hour shift. I wasn't reading or writing anything. So I said, I need a safe office job. And I applied to everything in the DC area. And I got hired by a telecom research startup as employee number 3.
Wow.
And it's, they were attracted to my writing background and they said, hey, we want you to figure out press releases and send them out to the media for us. We have lots of data. We know the media loves us, but we just don't know how to digest it and make it accessible to them. And so I did it and I got really good at it. And we were faxing at the time. I was programming 100 numbers on a fax machine and hitting send. And a lot of the people started calling and saying, hey, I'd love to just copy and paste these numbers. Can you send it as a Microsoft Word document? And that's when I was just like, email, eReleases, that sort of light bulb went off. I mentioned it to my boss and he said, yeah, that could be a cool business. You should consider starting it. So I spent about a year reaching out to journalists and asking them if I could email them press releases. And this was a time where email was kind of new, and
Mhm.
all these journalists said, "Sure, that sounds great." You know,
Did they
there's no
actually have email addresses to receive them?
they did.
They
Most
did.
of
All
them
right.
did, and
Wow.
it was a really exciting time. They want, they actually asked me, "Do I have to pay for it?" And then and now they're inundated with email press releases, and they would like to pay for it to go away. It's just too much.
I bet. Mickey, I remember literally, I remember my first job, like sending, and I was not on the PR side, I was on the marketing side, but once in a while they'd have us and literally putting into the fax machine and pressing send. And I could guarantee you there isn't, some of these young ones who are on this call right now, they don't even know what that is. And I have
Right.
no idea what that fax machine looks like. So did you, prior to that, I mean, you said you were writing poetry, you obviously had a background in writing, but you had never actually written a official press release.
I
How
had
did you
not.
know how to structure it?
I'm a nerd, so I just went and researched it, and looked at templates. I looked at what
Huh.
other people were sending out, and
Mhm.
I began to understand that rather than saying, "Here's our numbers," uh,
Mhm.
you have to have a story or
Mm.
something for a journalist to build a story on, because journalists are story builders. And so I would look at the data and I would pick out anomalies. For example,
Oh.
there's one Caribbean island that had more um, inbound traffic from the United States than every other Caribbean island combined.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was a big center for the 900 number, which was call a
Um,
psychic, call a horoscope,
yeah.
call an adult person, all of that. And so,
Uh-huh.
I would bring that story to light in the press release, and all of a sudden the media jumped on it. We were getting picked up routinely in the Washington Post, Economist, Financial
Wow.
Times, lots of major key publications. And it was really an exciting time. And I felt like, wow, this is kind of easy. But it was easy, I think, for us because we were the holders of all this great data, and there was
Right.
a lot of beautiful stuff that you could just pull out of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I remember, when I started my company, we hired a PR firm at the time, and how expensive it was. I think they were on like a $5,000 a month retainer with us, and we were a small business. We didn't, but we did it because we believed in the power of press. We believed in the power, and it did work, but that was expensive. And I feel like reading up on you, you really had a keen interest in making this accessible to small businesses and really changing how press releases and the art of public relations are really done for a small business. Tell me more about that. Just where that.
So, I guess when I launched, I was an email service. I charged
Mhm,
a modest fee. I was a matchmaker. I
mhm.
take your press release, and here are the journalists that matched in my database, and I sent it. And after a while, PR Newswire came and said, "Hey, you should also send through us." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"I'm charging at the time $300 for a release. You charge $1,200 for a 500 word press release. I don't think that we're going to be able to work." And they liked that I was servicing small businesses and entrepreneurs, people
Mhm.
that their sales team would never be interested in reaching out to because the dollars aren't there. I mean, they're
Right.
looking at each client being 15 to 20,000 a year, and
Mhm.
my clients would be willing to spend at max $2,000 or $3,000 a year.
Mhm.
So they saw us as a natural extension, and I handled the customer service, walking them through the process. And
Hmm.
so they came back and said, let's try to make it work. One of the things that we did
Wow.
was we scheduled all of our releases for next business day by default, because they have an editorial team overnight that has to be there in case there's breaking
Oh,
news. But
right.
80% of the time, they're not doing anything.
Oh, wow.
So
Huh.
they're able to work on our press releases overnight. And so it didn't cost them additional labor for that. So we really just tried to make it be a win-win for both sides. And
Wow. That is so smart. And this is at that time, it was just you, right? I mean, or had you already started to hire
it
staff?
was it was just me. I
Wow.
I I was scared of hiring someone because all of a sudden now I'm not responsible for my salary. I'm responsible for someone else's. So when I
Yes.
hired employee number two, I really, from a labor standpoint, could have used 3 or 4 people at that time. So I
Oh,
was very
yes.
slow to hire, but I I since realized the value of having a good team and bringing building a good rapport among your staff, and that's been a journey in and of itself, because I was an entrepreneur. I wasn't a good manager, and I learned a lot along the way.
Yes, yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, and yes, that fear for small businesses to take that leap, for employee number one, I guess, well, technically, you're employee number one, employee number two comes in the mix. It's a hard shift, but I took a look at your team. You've got, I feel like you have all the right pieces and all the right people in place for your type of organization. Really get those out there and make sure it's good content, right? Really good
Right.
content at the end of the
The
day.
one thing we don't have is a sales force at all.
Mm.
There's no
Well,
salespeople. When you call or chat, you're dealing with an editor,
oh,
and it's been one of the things that a lot of people who've worked with us has liked. They've never felt pressure
mm,
or anything that some of the other places do, and
yeah.
it sort of fits my
Hmm.
personality a bit more.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the world of press releases. So, just tell me, when and why should a business, especially e-commerce businesses, since this is really tried to gear towards that audience, create and distribute a press release? Tell me about the when and the why.
So I think the when is when you have a significant milestone, and
Mhm.
the why is the actual uh, earned media opportunities that you could get.
Mm,
Um, to give you an extreme example, early in the pandemic, we did a press release for the Dining Bond initiative,
mm,
and it was something that was created very short period to help businesses, restaurants in
mhm,
particular, that were closed during the pandemic.
mhm,
And you could nominate your favorite local restaurant, and if they responded and accepted it, you would give money. It would immediately go to them, and it'd be secured through like a gift certificate type thing.
oh, wow.
And what we discovered is, this story really resonated. There was a lot of negative news early in the pandemic, and here was something positive and actionable. The Wall
Mhm.
Street Journal wrote about it, Bloomberg, lots of publications, Reuters,
Wow.
lots. In total, it was over. I think we stopped counting it, like over 100 media pickups, and so
Mhm.
that is like a record for us. Um,
Wow.
as far as the number of places that picked it up. And it was, I did it as a courtesy
Mm,
to help the initiative, but it would have cost $400 or $500 to send that out.
sure.
Generated that marketing effort generated in excess of $10 million in revenue.
Wow.
And so I challenge anybody to create a pay-per-click campaign in Google or
Kid,
Facebook where you
not gonna
plug in
happen.
dollars and you get that kind of return. Now that's a wild illustration. I mean,
Sure.
that's an outlier, but it
Right.
does show the opportunities that if you put in a few $100s on a regular basis, and
Mhm.
one of those press releases really resonates, then the return can be substantial. I've had one client who sells municipal waste factories or something,
Hmm.
and
Interesting.
they handle everything, and they did a press release, and he didn't believe in it, but he said, my boss wants us to. And then he called me back and said, well, guess what, we're under contract with 3 people in Asia. And he goes, it's $20 million, so that's a
What?
really good return.
Oh my
So
god.
he's like, maybe I'm a believer now. um,
Wow.
but
Okay.
so it you don't know what the
Mhm.
opportunity is, but I can tell you that you can get earned media if you do strategic types of press releases. So
Okay.
if you have a milestone, like a new product, 95% of the product press releases that we get, a product launch,
Mhm.
they don't have enough elements to build a story. They will have, here's the product and here's a list of features. What's
Mhm.
missing is, give us a use case study. Who was
The
someone that
why.
used the beta
Yeah.
version of it? What was their experience? Here's
Yeah.
a quote by them. That's a story. Journalists
Mhm.
can build, like, here's a new product. Here's someone who used it. This was what they saw. And here's an amazing quote from them. That
Mhm.
is a story arc. And so many people don't realize that journalists are storytellers. And so if you
Mm.
give them the fodder for a good story, often they'll run with it.
That's great. I love that journalists are storytellers, and really in some ways you're feeding them like, hey, I've got this. And it's funny. I used to think, I think back to the number of press releases this company that I worked for, we would send out, and I would read these. I'm like, what, why, where's the why in this? What's the importance? And I think it was just, the attitude was, well, just blanket the airwaves with press releases and somebody's going to pay attention. But, the storytelling aspect, if you give and they're very busy journalists, right? They're getting inundated. So you want to stand out above them. So think of that. Don't just send out lots of press releases. Have a reason behind it and give the story behind it, why they should do it. That's a very, very, I think, a very important point in there. Tell us a little bit about the creative, the process of writing. I mean, I guess think back to when, you did all that research, when you were first time on the job, putting one together, yes, effective, the effective process, working with a company like yours is really important. But if I'm a, small business starting out for the first time and I want to take a crack at it myself, what kind of tips would you offer somebody out there in terms of creating an effective press release?
Right. So the most important thing is what it is you're announcing.
Okay.
Is it strategic and important?
Okay.
I used to think that how well written a press release was the most important aspect,
Hmm.
but I have to admit I've seen so many beautifully written press releases fail because what they're writing about just doesn't rise to the occasion of being newsworthy.
Hmm.
But that being said, when you do write a press release, your most important elements are your headline. It's what's going to grab someone when they're looking at a news feed of headlines to determine whether I want to click through and learn more based off the headline.
Okay.
You don't want funny quips or New York Post style headlines that include puns because it's a busy journalist looking for, is this relevant to me? So that is going to turn them off. You're not writing for the end user or the readers. You're writing for journalists. And then the second most important aspect, I think, is the quote. Usually there's a quote in the press release by a company executive. There can be multiple quotes, but you want to say something that is meaningful. So many of them are written as an afterthought saying, oh yeah, we need a quote, so let's just put something safe here. Say something that is beautifully worded, very concise, and very poignant, and really cuts through everything. So that I've had journalists tell me, if you give me an amazing quote, I can build the story around it. I can figure out the rest. So a quote is probably one of the most overlooked aspects of the press release. And the beginning of the press release is really important because, again, it's the top-down approach. You got them to click through the headline. Now you want them to read further. And it really is sort of like the inverted pyramid of trying to get people to scale all the way down the press release and figure out what the story is.
Wow, that's great. Well, so that's, the writing part, the creation part of this. Let's talk about the distribution. What's the process these days? I mean, you guys, cut a deal, put together a deal and with PR, was PR Web or PR
A
News,
PR Newswire.
PR
Yeah.
Newswire, yeah. But there are so many outlets now that you can go to. What's the right approach? Is it using outlets? Is there a customized, outreach process to maybe individual journalists that
Right.
or that
So
are interested?
I think that if you are a large brand
Hmm.
and you have a lot of resources, then having a PR professional, whether it's in-house or you're working with a firm, to
Hmm.
do really discreet pitches to just
Yeah.
a handful of journalists, the key publications you'd like to appear in, makes a lot of sense. It's very time intensive. It's got a high failure rate. You talked about spending $5,000 a month. It's not difficult for some of these places to charge $20,000 to $30,000 a month
Wow.
and offer no guarantee of media pickup. That being said, at some point, if you're not giving them a return, then what?
Sure.
Why bother? But the approach that I like with press releases is that it's sort of a shotgun approach that's available to a lot of people. It's not hyper targeted. You are selecting your industry, and that's getting tagged on the wire.
Hmm.
You are indicating that the types of media, the locality of where you're located, which is usually put in the date line.
Hmm.
All of that is relevant in getting out there, and then it could be a few people that respond, and you really never know. It's all a matter of timing. Who's under deadline? at a time that they browsed the newswire, saw your release, and wrote. But it's not unusual for some of our clients to get 8 to 14 original articles written about them, not the press release replicated on another website. That's syndication, and that happens. And there's a whole industry of people who call themselves newswires, and all they do is syndicate. And it's no one's written an article about you, and they're often relegated to subdomains on a website that really isn't navigable to users to that news site. So it really looks good, but it doesn't really give you any benefit. Real readers aren't seeing it. And so my approach and why I work with PR Newswire is because they are still working directly with journalists who at the end of the day we're hoping to get an article written.
And does your firm have, these established relationships with specific writers in certain industries as well, where you could pick up the phone, so to speak, or email or text and reach out?
We don't. We work with a lot of PR firms, and we do, sometimes occasionally recommend some in certain industries and things like that. So we have PR firms that use us. We're not doing the direct touch to journalists on a day-to-day basis. Early on when I started, I knew a lot of the journalists directly, but we just don't interact directly with them anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. Well, so if I'm going to sit down and try to take this on, although I wouldn't, because I think that a professional, like yourself and your organization that's so important. I just feel like you can sometimes not put your best foot forward. But let's say I'm going to give it a try. I know, and I feel that every conversation I have these days that AI is just circling in every conversation. This can't be a good approach for writing a press release, right? Tell me it's not. That this is not a good idea to use AI or any kind of fast track process. Or is it?
I used AI playing with it to write a press release, and I thought it did a really darn good job. But I also wrote it in a way that every paragraph that I was wanting, I knew what I wanted that paragraph to say. So I wrote it like, write about a company that's done XYZ. They were, started headquartered in this location. They've done this. And so I fed it all the data that I wanted it to work with. I thought the writing was pretty good. I mean, you have to get in there and tweak it, but I thought it was interesting. Now, that being said, and knowing some of my clients, they would never sit down. They would find it as difficult to feed that data in and to have written the press release initially. But that being said, I do advise my clients to take a first stab at writing a press release. You'd be surprised how well you can do. It's not, elevated writing, with the exception of maybe the quote should have a little more attention to it. And it is in the third person. It's pretty straightforward. And I would recommend anybody to try it. You're always welcome to send a press release to our staff through email and ask that we take a look at it. You don't have to be a customer of eReleases, but do allow us like 1 to 2 business days to get back to you with our feedback. We walk people through press releases all the time, and we recognize that people learning and discovering is the only way they're going to eventually use a service like ours. So we're just very open and part of that education process of helping people along the way, hoping that some of them come back and use us.
Well, you mentioned that early, in our conversation about the education side of your business, but I mean, that's a really phenomenal approach that you allow people to email, even non-clients, to email in a press release and give you guys a little bit of time to review and then give feedback. And that's super valuable. I mean, I can't imagine, I've honestly never heard of businesses doing that. It's almost like pro bono work, if you will. But my assumption is that it helps gain trust, and maybe down the road they might use you, maybe they won't, but they at least left with a good feeling about the business and what you can do, and you provide them. And your comment about AI, I feel like we need to have a bell now, like ringing every time AI is mentioned, and that somehow somebody I'm blown away by it. Listen, I jokingly say, please tell me it's not in here, because I just know that it's creeping in everywhere. But my business partner always likes to say it gets you 60% of the way there. You know, if that, maybe a little bit more. You got to be a human being. You still have to have that personal touch in there, and that's so important. But you know, if you know, time and money are an issue, and you want to get a head start, all right, it might be a solution. It might be an option out there. That's very interesting. Well, you know, you know, again, another thing we talked about was back in the day. You know, we're both, you know, long time, you know, been in the internet space for a long time. Just, you know, SEO. I remember, you know, press releases and SEO being used hand in hand back in the day. You know, this is the way you're going to get your backlinks. This is the way you're going to get this and that. Where does a press release sit in the world of SEO, and is it as important as it used to be?
Right. So I find it is important when someone writes an original article about you and
Mhm.
includes a link to your website. That's phenomenal. I mean, that's a huge signal to Google. Google actually has part of its algorithm that if they can contextually tell if an article is about your company and there is no URL, they give you the value as if it is a URL to your
Wow.
website. So
Okay.
if they see a New York Times article about your company and contextually they know it's about your company, that counts as a link back to you, even though there is no link. And
Wow.
I find that really good because a lot of the publications like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal rarely link to someone.
Mhm.
I have had some exceptions where a lot of my clients do surveys and studies in their industry,
Mhm.
and they will create a page where they put all of the responses to the study
Mm.
on there, and they put a lot of information. So they make it a huge resource heavy page. Sometimes I've had major publications linked to that. Publications whose policy it is we never include a link.
Mm.
So it is possible.
Interesting. Yeah, that you know, those types of announcements, fascinating. I mean, you know, the art of getting that release out and hopefully getting a article written or at least mentioned, you know, is going to have it's going to be super valuable in that you know, SEO process. So good to know that it's still an important you know, part of the digital marketing landscape out there. That's
Right. The
great.
one thing that has gone away is in the early 2000s, there
Mm.
was this game of syndication,
Mm.
and everybody was syndicating press releases on multiple websites, and people were seeing a little SEO bump from that. That's
Hmm.
gone away completely. And
Okay.
but the actual original articles and the ones that do link to you, those are great. Those are amazing links to have back to you.
Yeah, that's and I think that's what I remember was that syndication was just all over the place, and everybody thought that was the end all to be all in the SEO strategy. You didn't need to do anything else; just do that. You're good. You're good to go. So, any do's and don'ts when it comes to press releases and SEO? Anything that you would put out there and say, do this and don't do that?
Um, I think, sometimes, what the goal of what you're hoping the press release does
Hmm.
is important to indicate what type of press release you do.
Hmm.
I had a client come to me referred from an SEO company, and they were a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania, and they were not looking for local news. They weren't looking for customers, but they had a new domain name, and there was a story as to their old one went dark, and they wanted to get the new one to rank because when you do a search in their
Oh.
community, they don't show up. And the SEO guy says, if anyone can figure this out, it's Mickie. And so I said, talking with the SEO person, that the best links that they could get would be from auto industry trade publications.
Okay.
And so we did a survey of independent auto repair shops,
Hmm.
and they were the author of the survey. And we built out a really great resource page with all the questions and answers on it. And we sent that out, and they got over a dozen auto industry trade publications that picked them up. They got over a
Wow.
dozen local newspapers because it was a weird story.
Hmm.
We I always recommend that we use something like SurveyMonkey, 4 pages, 4 questions on each page. If
Hmm.
someone stops midway, you've still got half their responses. And on the last page, throw everything against the wall, put your silly questions, your weird ones. We asked, what's the weirdest thing a customer left in their car, and just left in an open field. And that was what we ended up picking to write the press release about.
Oh, that's
We
awesome.
just, statistically relevant, it was not, because every story was unique. But we just picked, I think, the top 30, strangest things, put them in the press release, linked to all of them, and the other questions and answers on a page. And they got all the links. Within 60 days, they were ranking in their community. And within 90 days, they were number one.
Wow.
And just with that effort.
I love it. I love it. That's I mean, that's so valuable, so valuable. And then, I guess coordinating there also with the SEO team to make sure that, everybody was on the same page. So let's say, let's take some of those elements there. And let's say I'm a new e-commerce brand, or maybe I've been around for a year and I'm kind of up and coming. What kind of strategy would you devise for a brand, really, maybe they're making their own products, to bring that consistent traffic, ultimately get them sales, get them that exposure for their new e-commerce business? What kind of, off the top of your head, strategy would you put together?
So I think one of the more interesting strategies that startups use is, looking at what their unique selling proposition is,
Mhm.
what it is that makes them different than everybody else, and sort of sharing their story, how they began, what obstacles they overcame, or what solutions, what problems they've solved, and also, who their hero is and who their enemy is, and just sort of all the elements of a story arc, putting it in there. The key is to be authentic. When eBay launched many years ago, there was the story about how the founder had programmed it to help sell his, I think, girlfriend's Pez collection.
Oh, yeah, right.
It was
Yeah.
completely a fabricated story,
Oh,
but it was done by a PR professional. But it did very well, because people could, like, wow, that's a really cool, it's a very unique
mhm.
situation, and it was a very cool thing that he created as a result of it. I'm not saying go out and make up a story, but I'm
Right.
sure that there is a story there that's probably interesting. And the more authentic that you can be, and perhaps inspirational, perhaps just showing your personal story,
Mhm.
it can was the first place that I always tell people to start.
That's
And
good.
I also get a lot of people that come to me and say, well, we're just not important enough to do a press release, we're not
Mm.
newsworthy enough. And I always challenge them that uh, journalists are curators,
Mhm.
and they like to bring to light and put a spotlight on small undiscovered gems.
Mhm.
Their audience is not going to appreciate them saying, oh yeah, Microsoft has a new Office product, here it is.
Mhm.
But if they talk about a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or something that's really novel and unique, then they know their audience is going to respond to it. So those tend to be the things they gravitate to. So generally, being smaller, being who you are,
Mhm.
it can often be an advantage. I've had many clients that didn't want to reveal that it was just a man and his wife.
Oh, looks like we lost our guest momentarily. I'm sure he'll be right back. I was going to tell. Up, there he is, and he's back.
Right. So
Yeah.
I was saying that I had a client that wanted to appear super professional, didn't want to
Yeah.
reveal that it was just him and his wife. And what I got them to do is to say, there's a story there. This is
Mm.
entrepreneurship. This is,
Right.
whatever.
Oh, having some technical. Oh, and he's back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I told them that there was a story there,
Hmm.
and they did it. And they immediately got picked up by Inc. magazine, and it opened with that story of, here it
Oh.
is, just a man and his wife, and this is the challenges they've had. And they shared a story about how they had to skip Thanksgiving with the family because they needed to do fulfillment because they had gotten slammed and their garage and kitchen was full.
That's a great, and so there's always a story. I feel like in everything, there's got to be a story, and not being afraid, right? To kind of find that gem. And I'm just thinking back as you were telling that story. I partnered up with a speech writer and a TV writer to create a service called The Perfect Toast. It was a toast writing service for guys getting married, and but neither one of us were like, this isn't newsworthy. This is not really. But he wrote a press release and he sent it out across the wire. I remember this, and we got picked up in the Wall Street Journal, front page
Oh,
of the Wall Street Journal. Not below the fold, if you will. But and they mentioned all the other, because he came at it with the idea that he created a story for the journalist. He presented a story, and he presented it as almost like, hey, this is a little gem out there that you don't know about. This kind of services exist. You should write about it. So I like this. I like what you're saying a lot, is really, one, believe in yourself, believe that you have something there, but maybe, talking, being able to talk to you, and, helping you, as a professional, kind of help somebody find that gem in their business. And the Inc. magazine is a perfect example. I mean, what better way to talk about two business owners, right, coming into this
right.
mix. So I love it. I have a slight aside question here that, it's still in the PR world, but, we've probably all heard of HARO, Help a Reporter Out. And there are probably other services like HARO out there. How effective is that? Now, that's not press release writing. That's you really kind of helping answer questions for a reporter and then maybe getting mentioned. How effective is that in the overall PR strategy of a business?
10 years ago, it worked really well
Mm.
because you would have a HARO call
Hmm.
for this is what I'm looking for, and you would have 5 or 6 people reply,
Hmm.
and your odds were very good that you might be the one who's picked, and they'd
Mm.
write the story about. Now, my understanding is they get over 100 responses,
Wow.
so your odds are
Hmm.
pretty small as a result of it. The popularity of it has
Hmm.
been sort of has made it kind of ineffective.
Yeah.
Um, and that's unfortunate because I do love that matchmaking aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it was such a great idea and a great service. Time consuming, you'd have to really spend some time in there. It's not like you're going to jump in and boom, there you go. Everything is good. But yeah, just very interested from your perspective, being in the industry overall, how that type of service. So let's just, let's talk about entrepreneurship here for a moment, where this, a lot of our audience, they are small businesses that are, starting out maybe for the first time, or they're established, but they're still small businesses. If you were as a veteran, and I do call you a veteran in the internet age, and the digital marketing, if you were in front of a class, and maybe you've been in front of a class, by the way, maybe tell us this in an actual real story here, and you had an opportunity to stand in front of maybe an e-commerce class or a digital marketing class, or maybe even a PR class. What one piece of advice would you give today's entrepreneurs, that would help set the stage for success? What's one thing they should be focusing on?
I think it's to be having a strategic mindset,
Mm.
being able to look at things analytically. I think that that's the one thing that I think that AI is not going to replace is
Mm.
our creativity, our ability to think and process.
Hmm.
And I think that unfortunately it's a skill set that isn't being taught in schools as effectively as it should, or even encouraged in schools. So many
Hmm.
things it's about learning and replicating what we know, and we really don't need to replicate things in the modern age. Everything we can look up, but the one thing you can't look up is intelligence, and looking through something in an analytical way.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that, the strategic approach, and maybe you just couple that with the AI. I came across this. Um, somebody was selling this. They had all the commands that you would need in order to get the most out of AI for a particular area. I forget what it was. It's probably specific to marketing, but that was a strategic approach to using AI, because I think AI, yes, it has the ability to make us dumb, right? We're just going to get dumber
And
because
the person who created those prompts was a human. It
yes,
wasn't
as a
the
human
AI.
who had a
Yeah.
strategic game plan and putting it together. And I think sometimes, when we go in there and we pop in, a question, or we pop in something to get maybe a response, there's no strategy the strategy is thinking ahead, right?
Right.
Laying the groundwork. So I love that you said that. And that's great advice to anybody who is starting, and anybody who's in business. Take a moment, take that deep breath, and sit down with a cup of coffee or whatever, and think strategically about your business. What is it going to look like? What do you want it to look like? Whether you're in e-commerce, or you're in PR, or you're, running a digital marketing agency, whatever it is, that's a great piece of advice. I love it. Well, anything, Mickie, we're gonna jump into some quick rapid fire questions as we wrap up. But anything around PR and just press releases in general that we didn't touch upon that you'd like to, discuss?
I don't think so. I think that the one thing I would encourage people to do is to put themselves out there.
Mhm.
That local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania did not want to do the survey because they're like, we're just a local auto repair shop. But no one cares that they're a local auto repair. They're the
Mm,
author of a survey,
yeah.
and anybody can put out a survey. Anybody can do a study. They pushed back. They didn't know who to send it to. And I said, do you belong to a trade association? Yeah, independent auto repair shop. I said, ask them if they'll do it. Tell them you'll mention them in the press release you'll be issuing over the wire. And they said yes. So, there are solutions to
Hmm.
problems. Often we put up our own roadblocks, and because we just don't feel comfortable. So get uncomfortable a little bit and explore and be open to pushing yourself, because PR is it still is a great opportunity. It's harder to get media attention, but I think it's easier to be strategic and greatly increase your odds of getting picked up.
Well said. Love that. Love that. And that auto repair shop and putting that survey together, great example. One that I'm thinking about as you're saying, like, what can we do in that area? I love it. So let's just jump into some quick rapid fire questions as we wrap things up. What gets you excited to wake up and tackle the day?
Um, for me, it's poetry. I
Mm.
took a 30-year break with my business, and a few years ago started back with poetry because I now can have some balance in my life.
That's
But
great.
so I really enjoy the writing. Knowing that if you become a best-selling poetry poet, you sell 500 copies. There's no big market there, so it's just something I do mostly for myself.
Unless you can survey the all poets out there and get a press release out there, then maybe things change. Maybe you sell
Maybe that's
more.
possible. Yeah.
What's your drink of choice in the morning as you have this moment of clarity and you get started with the day?
It's the drink of the day, and that's uh Pepsi Zero.
Oh, Pepsi
Uh
Zero. That's the
yeah.
drink. All right.
Used to be Coke Zero, but Pepsi Zero reformulated recently, and I'm liking it. It's hard to find though.
Oh, really?
It
Interesting. I wonder
sells
what.
out. They don't keep it in stock around here.
Wow. Okay. Oh, very, very nice. I like how they, it's not a diet drink anymore. It's zero
Yeah.
instead. Very good marketing. So, what job would you do today besides the one you're doing? Would it be a poet?
Um, well, I don't think there's any money there, but and I don't think I'm the best teacher, so I don't think that would be it. But I do think that it would probably be in PR
Hmm.
or marketing. I love the marketing aspect of my business, but
Hmm.
I also love the PR side of it. I do sometimes feel like if I had done more of a PR firm approach and did personalized pitching and stuff like that, it would be a different business model. But I wonder what it would have looked like over 20 some years of doing that.
Wow, that's I love that. Well, all right. So tell me, what's your favorite app or SaaS software? Something, the one that you cannot live without. The one that maybe you would use in this new way of doing business, your new business venture down the road.
I love TikTok,
Oh,
and I
wow.
love the algorithm that TikTok creates for me. I
Huh.
was an anthropology minor in my
Okay.
undergrad, and I have somehow trained the algorithm that I love it. And I guess I do, because I get all of this stuff on archaeology. There's amazing finds happening in Egypt and the Middle
Wow.
East, including Iran, that are, it's
Yeah.
just amazing. And I rekindled a love that I forgot that I still had.
Wow, TikTok. Nobody has said TikTok on it. 32 episodes in, nobody's mentioned TikTok. What are you going to do if they ban it? And then what happens?
Well, I can live without it, I assume, but I'll have to go explore more of YouTube, because I know that most of the people
Sure.
that are presenting these archaeological things on TikTok are on YouTube, but I just never thought of going and exploring. But the algorithm fed it to me and realized I liked it, and has continued to feed me mostly archaeology stuff.
That's great. Wow, love that. Love that. If you could give yourself one talent that you don't have, what would it be?
Talent. Um, I think to be more patient.
Mm, yeah.
I think it would have helped me be a better parent, and definitely would have helped me be a better boss.
Yeah, yeah. Sign me up for that. That's I'm with you on the patient side of things. Absolutely. Um, what's your favorite online store and why?
It's Amazon, and I hate what it's done to the book world, but I do love the convenience of it, the instant,
Yeah.
purchase, and same day. Well, why do I have to wait, the same day? Come on.
Uh-huh. I tell you, that's probably, I think, 85% of the respondents who have been surveyed say Amazon. And I know there's controversy around. Some people feel a little like, oh, I probably shouldn't say Amazon, but I'm going to. But yeah, you can't beat convenience. I mean, talk about a business that understands what people want, right? They want it
Right.
fast. They don't want to have to wait. And it's changed the landscape of e-commerce. Now, all the independent stores out there, they have to in some way try to mimic so much of what Amazon has put into our world, the free shipping, all of that. So yeah, that's a great answer. Great answer. How many times a week do you shop on Amazon? Is it literally like
Daily.
daily?
It's
it's
daily.
it's one thing here, one thing there. Yeah, that's
I'm a
how it is.
voracious reader of mostly poetry these days.
Okay.
So I'm always, and I listen to poetry podcasts, and someone will mention a name, and I'll be like, I haven't read them. So I'll just click a button, and it's on its way.
On its way. Gosh, no thought, no strategic
Nope.
thought on that one. You just boom,
Nope.
done. I love it. Well, Mickie, this has been fascinating. This is absolutely a topic that was at the top of our list. I really always wanted to understand, more about it. The press releases have been, in my world, in my career for, forever, I feel like, but I don't think I really understood the process, of putting one together, the distribution process that goes into this. And I love that your business is focused on the small businesses out there and helping them, because it shouldn't be a scary thing. Press releases and the world of PR should not be scary, and it should be accessible. We're all trying to grow. So I
Sure.
love that you bring that approach in there. Maybe take a minute if you could and just tell us, where we can find out about e-releases. You have mentioned that you guys have plans that we can, we'll put that up on the screen, but a little more information where people
Sure.
can
So
reach out.
the website's eReleases.com. I'd mentioned we're just editors. There's no
Mhm.
salespeople or anything like that. We're there to help people and walk them through the process. We also have chat online, as well as email for people who want to reach us. Um, all of our social media, I think, is on the lower right of the website.
Mhm.
And I would encourage people to sign up for our free masterclass on
Oh,
strategic types of press releases.
okay.
It's available at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And it basically, in less than an hour long video, walks you through 8 strategies or types
Beautiful.
of press releases that get media pickup. The survey and study that I mentioned is one of those, but there's many others that work time and time again. And this is distilled from doing 12 to 14,000 press releases a year and
Wow.
seeing what works and what works again and again.
I love it. I love master classes. This is, the master class speaks pretty much to what we were talking about today, really understanding how it all works. And then I guess, if it doesn't, and you don't want to do it, reaching out to you guys to take on that, the art of creating a great press release and getting it into the right hands is important. So Mickie, thank you so much for making the time today. I really appreciate it. Valuable information that we as an agency are going to pay attention to as well. So thank you so much for doing that. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks for coming on today.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Great. All right. That brings us to the end of another episode. What a great episode. I always, again, feel so much smarter walking out of these episodes of the E-commerce Revolution podcast. Don't forget to check out past episodes on YouTube, also on our site, skuagency.com/podcast. And as always, if you need help with your email and SMS marketing, that is what we do as an agency. Feel free to reach out to hello, HELLO, at skuagency.com. Mention this podcast and we'll hook you up with a free email and SMS strategy review of your SMS and email marketing, valued at $850. Thank you again for